welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. And I got to tell you, we have a great guest on today. You know, growing up in the Philadelphia area and graduating Stockton State in 1986, you know, I got to listen to this band's music a lot from the Dead Milkmen, and he's still making music, and he's an amazing talent. And my guest is, should I call you Joe Genaro or Joe Jack Talcum? You tell me, which do you like? Which do you prefer?
Whatever you like.
Where did Joe Jack Talcum come from?
Where did Joe Jack Talcum come from? Well, we all took different names for our albums. Dean took Dean Clean when we decided to make our first album. Dave Schulteis took Dave Blood, and Rodney, of course, took Rodney Anonymous. And I was the last to choose my last name, but I was already known as Jack and Jack Talcum before that because of the newsletter I created for the fictional band, the Dead Milkmen. They were fictional, but I had a newsletter called the Jack Talcum Fan Club Newsletter. Now, I didn't think of myself as Jack Talcum when I was writing the newsletter back in high school. I just thought I was writing about some guy I wanted to make a parody of a fan club newsletter about. And he became the leader of the band, the Dead Milkmen, who were made up punk band. But as it occurred, I made a tape with that Dead Milkmen, Joe Jack Talcum and the Dead Milkmen band name on it with my neighbor Garth and some people in the neighborhood. And Rodney heard it at school, or he got a copy of it. Garth gave him a copy of it at school. I went to high school in Coastville with Rodney, and he liked it and wanted to be part of it. And that's when we started our writing songs together, me and Rodney, Rodney and I, or whatever. And since the band already had a name, when we became a real band, when we got Dean and Dave to join, we just kept the name The Dead Milkmen. We already had some songs written for it and recorded on our tapes. So Rodney started referring to me as Jack, so I became Jack Talcum. But instead of having just the Jack Talcum on our record, I thought about it at first. I decided I've been called Joe or Joey my whole life, so it would be weird to suddenly be Jack. So I just added Joe in front of it and became Joe Jack Talcum. That's the long story version.
Well, no, that's good. Now, I want to ask you, because we're around the same age, and you know, you had the song, you came with you were around in punk rock. But what were your influences musically when you were a kid? Like, I had an older brother, so I listened to a lot of classic rock. But what were your influences as a kid? What kind of music did you listen to?
I listened to all kinds of music as a kid. In the '60s, I listened to 7 inches singles that my uncle gave to me, and they were just pop 60s stuff. In the 70s, I listened to the radio, so I would listen to AM radio, top 40, or FM radio, which was progressive rock, classic rock, and whatnot, also top 40. So it was a mishmash of 60s and 70s music, what was on the charts and stuff. I glommed on to in bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan, of course. I love Bob Dylan. And when I first heard the Ramones on the radio, the Rocket to Russia album, I really loved that. And they kind of reminded me of 60s music I liked, kind of bubblegum stuff, but with a lot of energy. And I just thought that was cool, and I became a fan of punk rock music as a result. Now, I got into Sex Pistols and The Clash and stuff like that.
Wasn't it a great time for music? I mean, you're from there. You probably listened to MMR MMR. I remember hearing The Police and Joe Jackson for the first time with them, and it was something different. I mean, what state did you listen to those stations when you were growing up?
I listened to all those stations. MMR, yes. I think it was IOQ when they were playing album sides. I heard Rocket to Russia for the first time, or at least one side of it. And there was I forget the call letters, but there was a station around 92 that I think it was Wi-Fi 92 or something, if that's possible. Yeah, Wi-Fi 92, I think. I listened to that. And for a short period of time, they were playing kind of a new wavy punk playlist, including TV Party by Black Flag, believe it or not. But that didn't last more than a year. But yeah, Philly radio was interesting enough. I mean, we had progressive rock, classic rock, and
so
there was an R&B station too.
What made you want to get into music? I mean, what made you decide? You said you had the fictional band, but what made you decide to pursue music?
I don't know. If it's hard for me to say. I liked it since I can remember. Like, I like to listen to records as a kid.
And did you want to be a musician then, or?
I had an idea that I might want to become a songwriter when, by the time I was 10 years old. And I did compose some really idiotic, but songs. So I was doing that from an early age.
So you go on, you get together. Now the Dead Milkmen start when you're officially start performing when you're in a Temple, or when did they start?
Yeah, I was at Temple going to college for radio, television, and film. I guess I was in my third year when we became a band. I met Dave at Temple because his brother went to Temple. He was in the same dorm as I was, and he was a punk rock guy, his brother Joe. And he actually told me that Dave is a bass player looking for a band, because I told him I'm looking for a bass player for a band I wanted to start. So he introduced me to his brother Dave, and we hit it off right away. So yeah, it was 83 when we played, summer of 83 when we played our first show, and that was Dean that got us that show, and it was only a couple of weeks after Dean joined the band. Dean rounded it off to be he was our first and only drummer.
Now, where did you guys play that first gig at? Do you remember?
It was in Harleysville, Pennsylvania. I think it was some kind of youth center. I forget the exact name of it.
And what kind of tunes what were you guys playing there? What kind of tunes were you playing?
We were playing a lot of the songs that would end up on Big Lizard in My Backyard and Eat Your Paisley. Our first two albums. We were playing Right Wing Pigeons. In fact, during the song Right Wing Pigeons, my amp went out and had to borrow another amp from another of the bands that were playing. And Rodney did some kind of ad lib that was really funny and awesome. And it was good to see at our first show that Rodney had a good rapport with the audience and was a good front end.
Now, what was the Philly music scene, the landscape, like when you were starting to get out there? Because, there's different bars, I think Khyber Pass and all those other places. But what was the scene like as you were trying to break onto the scene?
In Philly, there are bands like Sadistic Exploits, the Stickmen, Bunny Drums. It was kind of it was kind of vibrant and varied. The Fabulous Fondas, FOD, Flag of Democracy. So there are hardcore bands that were playing the fast stuff. That's around the time we got into the scene. Like I would go to shows. I guess my first punk rock show was in 1982, I think, in the early part of that year. And I even got Rodney to go to a show that had a band called Narthex in it that had Dean as the drummer. Little did we know that within a little over a year he would be in our band. But there were new wavy bands and straight up punk bands and hardcore punk bands.
Well, it's funny. There's a lot of cover bands, too, because I was listening to some of the music earlier. I love Bitchin Camaro that you mentioned, Crystal Ship. And I remember there was Crystal Ship, and there was Buff the Musket, and there's all these weird names. But I just took me back to when you talk Bitchin Camaro about Crystal Ship. I'm like, holy crap, I remember them.
I remember seeing the Hooters a lot, that band, in their infancy, when they were opening up for every band that you went to see, every bigger band.
So when do you guys start getting a lot of work? I mean, what was it like? When did you guys start really getting a buzz in the Philadelphia scene?
Probably after there was this show on Sunday nights on WXPN back then called Yesterday's Now Music Today, and sometimes they had live bands play, and they had us play one Sunday, and after that, I think that was instrumental in getting our music out to a larger audience and having more people come to our shows and having we looked for every show we can get and tried to play every show possible back then. But I think that was a milestone. And then, of course, after the Big Lizard album came out, Big Lizard in My Backyard had the song Bitchin Camaro, and that became like a college radio favorite. WXPN also back then was like University of Pennsylvania's college station. But yeah, then those types of stations across the United States were playing it, and we had more of a demand. When we went out on our first tour in '85, in June of '85, we found that we were a hard sell, in other words, on that tour. But after that tour, after Bitchin Camaro started playing on the radio, it was a lot easier to get gigs.
Now, was it hard for you to get a record deal? I mean, how did you all go about getting the records? I know in your past, later in your career, you've done a lot of cassettes and stuff like that. But what was it like trying to get a record deal?
We had already recorded 10 songs on our own because we made our own cassettes and sold them at shows, and we saved up enough for studio time. So we had 10 songs in the can, as they say, in the studio. But we didn't have any more money left to press it up. So we saw on one of the records that Dave had in his record collection, I think the band was called Get Smart, out of Chicago, that their record was on a label called Fever Records, and it was in Philadelphia. Not only was it in Philadelphia, it was 2 blocks from the basement that we rehearsed in at the time, in South Philly. And we paid him a visit in person with our cassette of songs, the 10 songs we recorded in the studio. And lo and behold, the guy, his name was Colin, said, if I give you some more money, can you record another 10 songs or so? This is not long enough, I think, for an album, but if you record some more, I'll put it out for you. And we signed a deal with him, as they say, and that's how we got our first record out.
Now, what was it like going into the studio when you know that you were going to get it printed? I mean, when you knew, it's when you do the cassettes, it's one thing, but it must be a great feeling when you know it's going to be an actual album. I mean, was it exhilarating for you guys?
We went in the studio and recorded another 10 or so songs. We didn't use them all, but we recorded. We made it into an album. So the second time we knew, of course, I always thought it was going to be an album no matter what. I thought at first we were going to put it out ourselves. That was the goal. But it turned out we had someone else put it out for us. But it just felt really cool both times. And to me in the studio, that was another milestone, as being in a real studio. I had always dreamed of it. My first time was making a record. So it was a lot of fun. Now,
what was it like? You said you were a hard sell when you guys went on the road, but what was it like those early days of touring? I mean, was it the grind? I did stand-up comedy for 8 years in the late 80s, early 90s, and it was a grind, man. You drive
it was fun. You
drive 3 hours, 4 hours to a gig, but what was it like for you guys?
Yeah, sometimes we sleep overnight in the van while people were driving. If we didn't have a place to sleep, we'd just go to the next town if we could get a place, it would be on people's couches or floors or whatever, and they'd have a party till 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning. Like, we have to wake up at 7. Oh, well, this is life on the road. Live it up, right? You can do that maybe 1 or 2 tours, and then you get burnt out. But I'd say it was a lot of fun because I felt I quit my job. I had a full-time job. And just quit it outright and said, I'm going on tour. We had Dave and Dean booked a lot of tour. But what happened also was a lot of the places we thought we had shows at, we booked them through the contacts section of a zine called Maximum Rock and Roll. When we actually got there, there was no show or it fell through. That happened maybe 1 in every 4 or 5 shows. The show fell through. And then what do? You try to get another show or try to get on another show, or you do nothing. And of course, you need to make enough money for gas to get to the next place. It was pretty rough. Luckily, Dean had a credit card. He was the only one of us who did, being the responsible adult, I guess. Dean, the drummer. But we racked up a lot of debt on his credit card. So we did pay it back by doing subsequent tours eventually. But it was hit and miss.
I can imagine.
When it hit, it was fun. We met a lot of people. We made contacts that we used in the future. We met Daniel Johnston on that tour. We stayed with Glass Eye in Texas, in Austin. Their Glass Eye's bass player would be our future producer for 3 of our albums, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th album. The 4th one had Punk Rock Girl on it. So it was a good tour for a lot of reasons. We got to meet the people at the record company that was distributing the record, which was Enigma Records. So
Tell me about Punk Rock Girl, because it's funny. You know, I got married 4 years ago. I actually played it at my wedding. That song that I played, Lou Reed, Perfect Day. And everyone's like, what? That's a weird combination, Steve. But I love that song. And it's funny, when I lived in L.A. and I got pissed off because I read the paper one time and they said top California songs and they said Punk Rock Girl. I'm like, no, that's a Philly song. You know, but now who wrote that? Was it all of you guys wrote that? Because I love that song.
Oh, thank you. I wrote most of it, and I showed it to Dave, who's a bass player, and he filled in some. I didn't have some lines. He wrote the line about Minnie Pearl and Do You Have a Bow? So he helped me out rhyming some lines that I needed to tell the story, but it was mostly there, and we performed it. As we didn't think it was a Dead Milkmen song, honestly. I didn't think it was. Dave and I did I guess you'd call it a side project, just him and me playing, not acoustically, but on electric at small bars in Philly. We called it Ornamental Wigwam. And we also made a home recorded tape. So we played it as Ornamental Wigwam. But it got a good reaction, and a couple people at our show said that we should play that as the Dead Milkmen. We really should. So we presented it to the other guys, and they liked it, so we put it on our 4th album.
So it starts becoming popular. Now, tell me about the video, because it's great. You have you mentioned Zipperhead and you mentioned Mojo Nixon, and there's some great references that you have to know, else you're out of it. But when they came to do the video, was it because videos were so big back then? Did the record company say, here's how we're going to do the video, or did you guys say, here's how we want to do the video?
Well, the only thing the record company ever did, and this is now I'm talking about Enigma Records, because we signed a deal with Fever, but Fever was just Colin. He was just one person, and he didn't really get involved with any of the artistic side. He was only I guess the business side. But the record company is the one thing that they demanded as far as videos were concerned, because they were putting the money up, I guess, for the videos, was the distributor, Enigma Records, was that they picked the song that was going to be the video. And other than that, it was up to us. They gave us the budget. I don't remember the record company having any input, but a lot of the ideas that were in that video were the directors by Adam Bernstein. He did our also did off of Bucky Fellini. He did the Big Time Operator video, where we have like the Frank and Elvis. Rodney dressed us up, and Rodney's like the Frank and Elvis. I don't know if you saw that video, but the Punk Rock Girl video was shot mostly in Philadelphia. We did go over to the Cherry Hill Mall to grab some illegal scenes that we didn't have permission to do. But most of it was shot in Philly, and most of that was shot. Well, we did a pizzeria in Philly, and then most of it was in what I guess you would call it a sound stage, but it was set up in Eastern State Penitentiary, which back then it was just a derelict kind of place. It was before it became right now it's like a tourist attraction. You can go to it and it's a little more fixed up and there's exhibits, and there were no exhibits back then. It was just a place to shoot a video.
So that song, it gets a lot of airplay. How does that change your career? Do the tours become better, or do you get to open for people, or how did that song change your career? Because now people saw it on MTV, because people watched MTV, because there's videos.
To our shows. I guess we're able to maybe demand a higher ticket price, for better and worse. I think we got bigger shows because of it. Although that kind of leveled out. I mean, it was for the time being, while it was on MTV, we were in demand for interviews, and I guess the publicity snowballs in that way. And we also were host on another show called 120 Minutes on MTV. I mean, that's where it started, on 120 Minutes. That's the show that first played it, but we got to be hosts on that show. And we were also asked to be on Club MTV, which is kind of absurd because it's not a club song, it's a dance song. I mean, you could dance to it, but that was weird. We did it, but it was weird.
What did you have to do? What did you have to do in that show? Just perform the song live, or
it's a lip sync? No, it's a lip sync, and it was a format where they would have the band lip syncing. It was totally obvious that we were lip syncing because we weren't even trying, and we're just making fun of the whole thing. But they interspliced the video, the video that they show, the Punk Rock Girl video, in with that, and they have dancers. They have a troupe of dancers that are regulars on the show, dancing, and they instructed these dancers to do a mosh and to, they might have even stage dived. I don't remember, but I do remember them being instructed to do another dance to our song.
How hard is it to lip sync? You're a performer, and I always think when you see it, it must be hard, because don't you want to just say, fuck it, I'm going to sing? I mean, how hard is it?
I don't think it's that hard, but I guess it depends on how accurate you want to be, I guess. I don't know. I did it for a few videos in that thing.
So
but it was just like whenever we had to do our video. I wasn't that fond of doing videos, honestly, but when I look back on it, I'm glad I did. It was an experience, but it's a lot of
sitting around.
A lot of sitting around and waking up early. These people who are in films wake up at like 3 or 4 in the morning. You got to, to get the sun at the right time, at the right place. But I'm glad we did them. Even with our first video, I wanted to see if they could hire other people to be us, and I kind of wanted to remain mysterious. I didn't even want to put our own photos on any of our records, but I got outvoted on that. I think we never, except for the live album, we never put our photos on the front. So that's something we kept throughout.
Why did you want to? Why is that? Because you wanted to be. I mean, why? That's different. Like, why did you want to not have your photos?
I wanted there to be some mystery to it and let people decide. And then I wanted actors to play us in different videos, and we could have different actors. I don't know. That was my concept, but it got that. Maybe that was one thing that I don't really know, because we had a manager who interceded for us, sort of as far as dealing with the record company. So what he wanted us to know, the record company said he would tell us, and I imagine there was probably stuff that he just kept to himself. But maybe that was. Something that they wouldn't allow is the video, is the band not to be in the video. I don't know, but it could have been my own bandmates that didn't want it. I don't really remember that.
Now,
the detail.
What was your writing style like? How did you write, and how do you write? I mean, did you come up with the words first, or the music? How did you write?
When I wrote songs, I wrote all of the stuff too, and I also did collaborations too, but especially once the Dead Milkmen got started. But I would first think of the music. I would play around with the music in my head, and then like it would come as an idea, a musical idea, then try to figure out how to play it, right? Usually on piano first, because that's how I started, was on piano and leaped to guitar. Although now I'm probably more versed in guitar, but I'd embellish it, work on it, and then I would try to come up with lyrics that would match whatever melody I was doing. Sometimes the lyrics would be coming also in my head, like it would be a lyrical idea, but not a full one. So I would have that as a start or a scratch. But usually I would work music first. Unless somebody was asking for a specific song topic, like Rodney or I were trying to write topically, then I would write lyrics out, and it would be the opposite. I would get my rhythm, rhyme, lyric, and then put music to that. So I guess those are the two ways that I had and probably still write music. But when collaborating, like with Dave, he would have a bass part which would inspire a guitar part, and then we together try to come up with another, like we'd play it ad infinitum, we'd play it, over and over until we liked what we were doing, and then say what would go good with this, how would another part work, and come up with another part, and just piece things together.
Now after Punk Rock Girl, after that, what did the record company want from you guys? Did they want another hit? Did they want another Punk Rock Girl? Because I always hear stories of musicians who, they go, we need this. What was it like after that song hit?
Interestingly, that was our last record for Fever. We didn't renew the Fever contract, but we signed with Enigma Records, the same company that was distributing and pressing records for Fever. Yeah, of course they wanted another hit. It didn't happen, but they wanted another hit, and they picked another song off the next record that was one I sang. And this is when I found out that we couldn't. I wanted a different song to be. It was Methodist Coloring Books, the song they picked. I didn't like that choice, but I was powerless to change it. And maybe if Punk Rock Girl wasn't a Dead Milkmen song and wasn't one that I sang instead of Rodney's the main singer. And for example, in case you don't know, Punk Rock, I would sing one or two songs at the most on any album. And then on this fifth album, the one that came after the Beelzebub, which had Punk Rock Girl on it, I sang 3 songs. And they chose one, of course, that I sang. I say, of course, proud, maybe because of the success of Punk Rock Girl. It's hard to say. I don't really know. It wasn't a hit, and that was the end of our relationship with that record company.
So, what eventually made you guys break up? I know you're doing an example. What made you break up? Were you guys just burnt? Were you just tired of the biz? I mean, I know a lot of people just get tired of the biz, and because it's a grind, and people think that if you're a musician, like it's all stars, but it's not. You guys work your ass off, especially when you're on the road doing morning radio, doing all that BS.
But yeah, because Dave wanted to stay in the band, and I wanted to stay in the band, but the other two people didn't want to stay in the band. And yes, I think we were all tired of touring as much as we were, especially after we started touring throughout Europe as well. As the United States, it seemed like that's all you do is you have to come up with an album, put out an album, and then you have to tour. And over and over, until it's time to put out another album, and you have to somehow write that album and get it recorded. And Dean, in particular, Dean was the first person to say, "I don't want to be a part of the band. It's okay with me if you get another drummer." But then Rodney said, "No, I don't want to do this anymore either. You're right." And we couldn't. Dave and I looked at it and said, well, we can't just replace Rodney and Dean and still be the Dead Milkmen. Maybe some bands would do that, I don't know, but we couldn't do that. So we said that's it.
So what do you decide to do then? Because you're a songwriter, you're a singer, you play guitar.
I decided I needed to get a job, and I became a barista.
Okay.
At a coffee in Center City, slinging coffee, and I actually worked my way up to be a part-time manager, at least Monday manager, assistant manager. That's what it was, assistant manager, and that was an experience. And then I got another job, but as I never stopped doing music. I was in a sort of side band called Touch Me Zoo back then, and we continued to do stuff. And I met up with a fan of the Dead Milkmen who came to Philly to go to school at Temple, where I went to school, and we started writing songs together. And we formed a band called Town Managers, which morphed into a band called The Low Budgets. And we made a lot of music together and toured over, throughout the U.S. and Europe. And we put out like 3 records. So I did a record with Dean, but that wasn't a touring band, with Dean and some friends who comprised the Big Mess Orchestra, who were a part of the Big Mess Orchestra. They weren't the whole thing, but we called that Butterfly Joe, and we played some songs that Andy from that band chose from all the solo tapes I had made over the years. So I did a lot of stuff in the interim. And then the Dead Milkmen, just as the Low Budgets started to dissolve after our second tour of Europe.
Why did you dissolve?
Why did the Low Budgets dissolve?
Yeah.
Because our main guy, Chris, the guitar player and singer and main songwriter, decided that he was going to settle down in Berlin after our tour in Germany ended. I guess he fell for somebody, some young gal in Germany, and just decided to stay. And that's what he did. He stayed and didn't come back to the United States. And that's how that's the beginning of we got back together for a couple of reunions, but he's I think he's a German guy now. I mean, he has German children anyway, I should say.
So the Dead Milkmen come back. How did you guys get back together?
That same year, at the end of that year, we got asked to play a festival, and we said yes to it, which surprised me. I thought everybody else would say no, but lo and behold, everybody else said yes. When we got asked individually if we wanted to do this festival gig called Fun Fest, and it was so fun for us that we decided to stay together. And we didn't have Dave. Dave unfortunately passed away 2004, 4 years prior. But we asked the bass player of the Low Budgets to fill his shoes, Dave's shoes, and he did a pretty good job. He's still doing it. Dave Stevens, also known as Dandrew. So we got back together. Never would have imagined, never in my wildest dreams could I have foreseen that not only would we play a show, even 3 months prior to that happening, maybe 5 months prior to that happening, I forget. I think we had 3 months notice. So. But yeah, that we would also get back together again on a permanent basis in 2009, the year after.
What is that like? Like, it's. I always wonder, is it the feeling like if you were divorced from a wife and then you got married to her again? Or, I mean, what was it like when you guys got back together?
It's kind of good. It had both. I was elated at first, but I soon realized there were good points and bad points. But I think they're mostly good.
So
it's like learning about each other's personalities over again, and what you. I had a bunch of solo. Even before I realized that we would get back together permanently, I had solo. I was playing solo shows. I was doing tours, and I had a couple booked well in advance, and I wasn't going to cancel them. And I was also involved in a couple other side things, but one other side project that was taking time. So it's like, oh, now there's a lot of, and I had a full-time job on top of that. So it's like squeezing in more time to do practice to play more Dead Milkmen shows. And not only that, we wanted to make new music, put out a new album. The Dead Milkmen did. That was one of the stipulations of being a band, especially Rodney. Rodney's idea was you don't want to be your own cover band or, has-been band that only plays songs from the 80s. He wanted to be relevant now, so why not write songs? And he's very prolific, so it made sense.
Now, how often do you guys play live now? Since 2009, how often do the Dead Milkmen play together?
Not as often as we did in the 80s. So it would be like we would play at most 3 or 4 shows in a row. I think our longest tour was in 2015. I might have the year wrong. But it was after we released, I guess, our second album as the new outfit. We did a West Coast tour, which was 10 days. That's the longest we ever toured in our new formation. So we only do like weekend jaunts.
Now, on the newer albums, you said Rodney does a lot of writing. Are you also involved with the writing on the newer albums?
I am, not as much as I used to in the older albums. But we all write together. I think that we just worked on an album that's we hope will come out sometime this year, but I don't know. I can't say. There was very collaborative, but still I'd say of all the full songs that Rodney writes complete songs that they're too good to change, they're just, that's the way they are. And Dean sometimes, but rarely, will write a complete full song, but he contributes either lyrics, we have Dropbox that we share stuff on, lyrics up with no music, and somebody like me or Dan Stevens will write music to it, or he'll put up a song without an instrumental, or just an instrumental saying take these parts or whatever, or take it as it is, but it needs lyrics, do whatever you want. I'll put lyrics to it, or Rodney will put lyrics to it. But I still write complete songs like I do. I guess a lot of stuff I write is not really Dead Milkmen material.
Well,
I don't want to, like it would have been maybe on the Soul Rotation album that we did, but not what we're doing now.
Now,
I'm kind of old style. I've always written.
How has your writing style changed as you've gotten older? Like your lyrical content, has it changed a lot?
Changed enough or changed at all? I still write. I still have the same subject matter. I like to write about love and truth and what is life all about kind of stuff, and my own mopey songs I would write if I get down and I just want to write a song to make me be happier again.
So, what's the future of the Dead Milkmen, and what's the future of you? I mean, would you like to carry, solo and that? I mean, what do you want to do in the next few years?
Oh, I want to keep making music. I want to see. It's hard for me to tell in the next few years. I just go, this is what I'm working on now. I'm working on songs now. Hopefully, it'll be a collaboration with someone I admire the music of, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it just takes time. It's for some reason it's like there's so many adult things you have to do when you're a kid. You have all this time, and you don't think about how long is this process going to take. And that's kind of like the mindset I get into when I'm working on music, is just sit down and do it and see where it takes me. I don't really have a game plan for my music solo wise. For the Dead Milkmen, we get together on a yearly basis and have a meeting. I mean, back in the day, we'd have a monthly meeting or a bi-monthly business meeting back when the band was our occupation. Now it's more of like a side thing. But we have a yearly meeting and we plan it out. And as far as I know, the plan is that when this album comes out, we're already booking shows. I can't really say what they are yet. They can't be announced, but we'll be playing some shows, and I can't tell you when the album's coming out because we don't even know the date. But I'm banking on it being sometime this summer or fall. We'll see, because that would align itself with playing more shows, and just, hope that the album gets an audience and we sell all the copies that get pressed up.
Well, dude, that's awesome. I want to thank you for coming. As I said, I listen to Punk Rock Girl like once a week. I just, I always do it. But so how can people get in touch with you?
With the Dead Milkmen?
Or you. I know your website's joejacktalcum.com.
Yes, joejacktalcum.com. They can email me at joe@jacktalcum.com. So the email address is jacktalcum.com without the Joe. And you can connect to that website, jacktalcum.com. It's a website too, securely if you want. You can also send me snail mail at Post Office Box 112, Wagontown, PA 19376. Wagontown is WAGONTOWN. So that's P.O. Box 112. Although I don't think too many people are sending snail mail these days, but I still like it.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you. So people, go check them out. Go check the Dead Milkmen out. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 945 episodes. Email me at coopertalk.net. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guest. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next time.